Toku Secrets is a podcast run by the Anime Secrets website. Check us out at animesecrets.org for more anime, video game, tokusatsu content. Remember to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts today.
Hey everybody, it's Jason from Timerangers Time Force, and you're watching Toku Secrets Podcast.
Welcome to Toku Secrets. Join us as we journey into the marvelous world of Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Power Rangers, and many other tokusatsu. Get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. It's Morphin time! Link to the Morphin Quest. I'm Nathan Desai, the dazzling adventurer, Boken Silver.
I'm Patrick Gower, and I'm Shinken Red.
And I'm Rizwan Merchant, Gokai Red.
And I'm Anthony Davis, also known as Curie Green. And we're Toku Secrets.
Alright guys, so we're all here, and we are carrying on with Mirai Sentai Timeranger. We're doing case files 11 through 20. We did case files 1 through 10 last time. Little bit of a brief recap. Of course, since last time we were looking at Timeranger, we were looking at the first, the introductory stuff, so kind of got to give a little bit of of some intro on what the story is. So if you've seen Power Rangers Time Force, then you should know the basic premise of this. There are 4 cadets of the Time Police in the 30th century. They got selected by a mysterious man named Captain Ryuya to chase a gang of criminals called the Londar's family, who traveled back into the 21st century. Our 4 cadets are the tough and no-nonsense private detective Yuri, the deadpan and serious former racer Ayase, this suave and cool former fighter named Domon, and this wide-eyed and innocent, almost childlike alien named Shion. And they arrived in the 21st century. They teamed up with a rich youngster named Tatsuya Asami, who was an ancestor to Captain Ryuya. He looks and sounds exactly like him. And they teamed up to use the Time Police's technology to become Time Rangers so that they can capture the leader of the Londar's family named Don De Niro. Yuri is Time Pink, Tatsuya Time Red, Ayase Time Blue, Domon Time Yellow, and Shion Time Green. And together, they are Mirai Sentai Timeranger. And they moved into a building that Tatsuya bought for himself, and they turned it into an odd jobs business called Tomorrow's Research. And over the course of the first 10 episodes, we got some of the shades of the backstories for some of these. Tatsuya is from a rich and well-known family. His father's a successful businessman, but Tatsuya rejects this socialite lifestyle, and he wants to make a life of his own. And in the second episode, he actually breaks away from his father. He basically cuts himself off. He basically declared his independence. Yuri is an orphan. Her family was murdered by an assassin hired by Don De Niro. And she discovered in one episode that Don Niro was behind her family's death. So now she's basically obsessed with trying to capture him. Ayase is a former race car driver who was forced to retire. And he reveals to Tatsuya that he had to retire because he has a rare heart disease that is uncurable called Osiris syndrome, which will kill him in a year or two because it'll cause his heart to stop. But he keeps this a secret from everybody, although Tatsuya found out by accident. Domon is a former pro fighter who got fired for being late to matches because he likes to chase girls, because that's Domon. And he comes from a big family, and he's actually a very emotional person because he misses his family. And finally, Shion is an alien from the planet Humard, which was destroyed by war, and he's basically the sole survivor of the planet. He lived on Earth because he was sent there when his planet was destroyed. So in other words, he's kind of like Superman, like Kal-El, with that type of backstory. Okay, so we're going to jump in now. The first couple of episodes until the last 3 that we looked at here are mostly filler episodes. We have Case File 11, Deathmatch City, where most of this episode is the Time Rangers battling a Londar's prisoner that's hypnotizing people into causing chaos all over the city. The big thing that happens in this episode, though, is that Honami, who is she's a photographer who appeared in a previous episode, she's trying to discover the identities of the Time Rangers, but then she gets in the way when while trying to discover their identities, and then she gets really upset when she screws the Time Rangers up. But then Domon gives her some assurance that everything will be fine, and she basically falls in love with Domon, although she doesn't know Domon is Time Yellow, and that's actually pretty big because at the end of the episode, she discovers the identities of the Time Rangers. The only one that she knows for sure is that Yuri is Time Pink, because she thinks that Ayase is Time Yellow, so pretty big mix up there. The only other things to note about this is that there's some subtle development for the villain Gian. He was Frax's counterpart. Because unlike Doniro and Leela, who are both, basically just trying to do stuff for money, he's all like, I don't care about money. I care about, like, destroying things and, like, spreading chaos all over the place. So he's pretty insane. Although just wait until we get later on in the series. Only other thing is that this episode wasn't adapted into Power Rangers. Well, sort of. I mean, the plot of a photographer trying to discover their identities was there, but the footage of this was used in a Quantum Ranger era episode where the Time Force Rangers were trapped in a mirror world, and this monster of the day was one of those monsters that only appeared in the mirror world. So, I just spoke for like quite a bit of time. Anybody want to give their thoughts on this episode first?
The first thought I have is she discovers who they are. They're all wearing color-coded clothes. So clearly the guy wearing blue was the one who's yellow and not the person wearing yellow.
Well, Domon's wearing orange.
Great deduction.
But...
Great deduction.
Nice going.
Great deduction.
Yeah. I mean, my bigger issue is that, like, Time Yellow is clearly, like, Domon is clearly the biggest and tallest of everyone there. And when they're morphed, their height matches, like, who they're supposed to be. So Domon should clearly be Time
You got to
Yellow.
understand, Nate. She's blinded by ISA's fine self.
Yeah.
Well, he is.
No, she's snorting that
right.
copium
She's like,
hard,
oh my god,
she...
Time Yellow is hot. Like...
No, it's gotta be him. But yeah, honestly, there wasn't much to this episode though, because I guess that would be like the only footnote is that she found out who the Time Rangers were, like their actual faces and everything. But that's it. I'm actually kind of curious as where this goes because Time Force never had a element to its plot like this. So...
Like they technically had an episode where a photographer discovered the identities, but it was just a one-off filler episode.
Yeah, but it's very clear that this is going to be a reoccurring, like mini plot thread throughout the series. So I'm kind of curious as to where this goes.
It comes up later on as well.
In Time Force?
No, like
in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the batch we're talking about. I think it's like episode 17 or something.
And she's going to be very recurring over the course of this entire series. So so get used to seeing Honami. I mean, I think she's a good character. So I mean, it's not a problem seeing her.
She's okay. I like her because she's persistent.
Yeah.
In doing her job, and she has like Peter Parker vibe.
I need to pitch the Time Rangers right now.
Yeah, I'd say
like.
She's got a camera, so all of a sudden she's Peter Parker.
Well, no, okay, she has a camera, and she's not afraid to get photos of a superhero or a supervillain to get money for a paper.
Only thing she's missing is just Japanese J. Jonah Jameson.
Well, I got J. Jonah Jameson vibes from like the Time Force episode too. Like, I mean, literally, the guy is telling that photographer, like, bitch, I want pictures. I want faces for the Rangers. And if you don't put any faces, you're fired.
Remember that?
But, okay.
Give me those faces. You're fired. Oh, wait. I don't have a fire. Okay, you're on fire.
No, but this episode was very dull to me. Like, not much really happened. And the thing that I kind of complained a lot about when I was watching this, and it's a common thread I feel like for me right now, is we have these characters that we went through the recap on earlier, but I don't feel like we get anything new from this episode. And really, this should be a Yuri-centric episode, like a focus episode for her. But it really isn't. It's just here's a photographer here to annoy y'all. Have fun.
How would it be a Yuri-focused episode, though?
I was expecting it to be more Yuri-focused when it first began. Because Yuri's the one that was like kind of the antagonist with the photographer, Hanami.
Yeah, she was kind of
So I was expecting this to be Yuri-centric. And then halfway through, she falls in love with Domon, and we're all like, okay.
But like the way I see it though is that like I can understand why Yuri acted the way she did towards her, because it's like we literally could have stopped, prevented all this chaos with this, the Satanist dude trying to get people to kill each other, and I mean, I know she didn't know that, she was, trying to get in the way, but at the same time, it's dangerous work. She needs to just not be in the way, because otherwise she'll get hurt or killed, trying to get that close.
I'm baffled that the people outside this whole thing didn't know what was going on. Like, did the media really not report any of this to the public?
I thought they did.
Well,
she seemed surprised at what was really going on inside that part of the city. Like, she didn't know.
Yeah.
So did they just block off that part of the city and not explain what was going on in there?
Show us like, hey, like this part of town is dangerous because people are being brainwashed and trying to kill each other, whatever. Like, stay away or like quarantine away from that city, that specific city or like area. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see. I mean, I might defend this episode just a little bit, just because. I mean, I don't know. I think I like Honami's character, decently, and I think the big thing about this is that I think the thing I like about this is that you guys, and I think this is a perfectly fair criticism, is that, let's be honest. I mean, Dorniro and Leela are not exactly the best types of villains, and they don't come off as nearly as intimidating. But in the case of Gian, with this big, like, more insane, like, I'm going to hypnotize people to like riot and like throw the city into chaos, like, that does kind of make Gian out to be a slightly more credible.
Oh yeah, I think especially when we're going to get to those episodes a little bit later in this episode of the podcast. But yeah, I know that Don Dornero is framed as the main antagonist, but it really does feel like Gian actually is the main antagonist of this show so
he
far.
Pretty much is.
And I'm assuming it's really going to become more true as the show goes along.
Because I know, because I'm not the only one who feels
I'm not
like
how, but
I just do not like Dornero. Like, he just feels so boring in comparison to Gian.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a reason why Time Force took his suit and turned it into a comic release film.
I would have too.
Yeah. Because at this point, it's like Dornero is just like typical mob stuff, while Gian is an actual like psychopath. But it really helps to the dynamic of Time Force's villains, where it was two kind of like, I don't know if I want to call Rancic a terrorist-minded villain, but they were basically, they had opposite goals and they kind of wanted to go about it the same way, so they were at each other's throats all the time, and it added this really cool back and forth dynamic between Rancic and Frax. And so far, I was expecting there to be a little bit more between these two, but it's just nothing. It's just, don't do this, Gear. And he was like, okay, I won't do it again. While he's psych.
Sucker.
Like, okay, I'm not gonna do it again. I mean, he looks at the camera.
I'm gonna not do it again. That's right. What?
What do we want to give this one out of 10, guys?
I'm gonna give it a 6 for the slap.
I was gonna go with a 6. The slap was the only thing that made.
That's what I said too. I love me and said the exact same thing. Like,
No, like that slap's the only memorable part of the episode to me.
Mm-hmm.
Minus the fact that we have a photographer that's basically Peter Parker.
Yeah, I'll probably give it a 6 too. Maybe a 6.5, just because I mean, I thought Honami's whole thing was pretty good, but I mean, I can still see that it was kind of dull. All right, so now we're going to move on to Case File 12, Wish Upon a Star. And I know this is not a reference to the Disney song, unfortunately. But this is a filler episode too, but it's a Shion centric episode, and it's very clearly a Shion episode.
Yeah.
Like unlike the Zyuranger filler episodes, where I feel like I'm putting air quotes around, like this is a Goshi centric episode. There's times where I can legitimately say that like this is a character centric episode.
Because it is.
Yeah. So Shion encounters an alien in disguise. He's being forced to work for the Londars in exchange for keeping him safe and this human that he's befriended safe. The only thing to note about this is that this episode was unadapted in Time Force, but technically footage was used for it because Time Force like to use a lot of fight footage that's like the climax of a Timeranger episode, but they take it and put it in like the cold open of some of their episodes, and this was one of those episodes. It was the beginning of, ironically enough, it was actually also a trip-focused episode, sort of short-circuited, where they used the, which I'm not a huge fan of that Time Force episode, but what do we think about this one, guys?
I like this one a lot, actually. Because, so, unlike what y'all said in the last podcast, I still stand by Sion's a pretty darn good character.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a fun time just to see Sion get some spotlight to do something to show that he's more than a passively nice person. Like, he actually gets involved, and I liked it. I thought it was a really good character development for him.
Yeah, the one complaint I complained about this at first, but then the more I thought about it, I realized it's not a complaint. At first I was thinking, you could have had Argo, that's the alien, end up being from Humard like Shion, but then the more I think about it, the timeline wouldn't have worked because Shion is supposed to be like a baby when Humard is destroyed, and I mean, he's not supposed to be born for like another 1,000 years at the time of this episode, so the timeline wouldn't really match up with Argo being from his world. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the rest of you guys? You got anything to say?
Nah, not really.
I thought that it was a
Anthony?
very interesting episode where I guess you could say like these two have something in common where like they both, are basically the last survivors of their race, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the fact that, this guy does help them out at the end, and he wasn't, because at first I thought about the episode was going to be, I thought it was going to be like this dude wasn't really an alien. He was just like, pretending to be one due to what the alien of the week was going to do, but apparently not. So.
Oh, now one moment that really made me smile was when Theon is telling Argo, like, I know what it feels like to be alone because I'm alone too. And then the other Timerangers come in and they're like, hey, you're not alone. I mean, we got your back. Like,
that was a nice moment as well.
That plays off of like literally from the previous Sion episode where they said like they're determined to like be the family that Shion never had, and that moment kind of subtly builds off of it.
Yeah.
Because now they finally see like, oh wow, like this is how you were feeling the whole time. Why didn't you tell us? Like,
I want to give this a 9. Actually, I thought it was really good, touching episode.
Yeah. I was gonna go with a 9 here too.
Anthony, Patrick,
I don't really have
debating on whether or not to give it an 8. I'll give it an 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so now we have another filler episode, Case File 13, Battle Casino. This is kind of a Tatsuya-centric episode, although just kind of. It basically, so the Time Rangers are hired by a woman to find her missing husband who's addicted to gambling, and they discover this illegal fight club that the Londars are secretly behind. Only notable thing is that this is the first, and I want to say only, although I don't want to stick to that because there might be another episode where it happens. But if I'm going off of what I remember from Time Force, I think it is. This is the first time that Time Robo Beta, that's the equivalent of the Time Force Megazord Mode Blue, defeats a monster by itself. Because in all previous episodes, they would always switch to Time Robo Alpha / Time Force Megazord Mode Red, and it would finish off the monster. So, yeah, I just want to get my piece done with this. This is probably the most fillerist filler episode. I want to say fillerist. I know that that's not a word, but that's the best way I can kind of describe it. Like,
I
mean,
just looked at the Merriam-Webster dictionary and it's a word now.
Oh, okay. I mean, I thought Tatsuya was cool because he's more sympathetic with the character of the day, and I think the plot works well because the Time Rangers being hired to investigate this thing. I mean, Yuri said she was going to set up her own private detective agency, so it makes sense that she would be hired for that. All I could say is, I mean, it's not amazing, but when you compare this to like G Ranger filler episodes, I mean, or some filler episodes from older Sentais, like a certain one that I hate, Battle Fever J. God, I hate it. But
it had the best use of all time.
Dude, no, don't.
Come on, Nate. Tell us how you really feel.
I mean, Nate, if you rant, I'll rant. Because this is where I want to make that rant.
Okay, you can go ahead. All I'm saying is that this episode could have been... It's not amazing, but it could have been worse. I mean, compared to some of the filler episodes we had in Geo Ranger, this isn't that bad.
So, this episode was pretty decent, despite the fact that it was all filler. Up until I realized Tatsuya's fighting name was Red Tiger. And where have I heard Red Tiger before now?
No, not again. Someone stop him.
It was really...
They set that joke up for you from, 20 years ago?
No, they're from the year 3000. They know all this ahead of time.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
They're like...
The Illuminati is real.
Yes. All according to plan.
Illuminati Sentai. Secret Ranger!
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, wait, hang on. Illuminati Sentai. Espionage Ranger!
Not Espionage Ranger.
There we go. But yeah, no, that was just something I want to call out and say, of all the freaking names this guy could have taken, it had to be Red Tiger.
Couldn't you have said like Red
Dragon, Red Lion, Red Squirtle?
No.
I don't care.
No, if they do Red Lion, that seems reminiscent of Cole, and we don't want that either.
I don't mind that. He's the belly guy.
Cole is Zahn 2.0. He's actually Zahn done kind of sort of correctly.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if you want to see a Jungle Boy character, I know what I keep trashing on this Sentai, but Battle Kenya from Battle Fever J, he's not a great character, but he was the one thing that kept me going through the Sentai. Like, he was holding my hand and just slowly carrying me through it. Like, he's better than John, I think. Of course,
okay, I've never seen this Sentai, but I will say right now he's better than Zahn. You know why? Because he's not Zahn!
He's also played by the same guy that played the original Uchu Cage Gabon, so...
That's a detail, that's okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But No, other than my little nitpick, which will cost this episode a point, by the way.
Fair enough.
This wasn't a bad episode. I was entertained. It didn't accomplish much of anything. Like, this could have been a good moment for us to get more Tatsuya stuff,
Yeah.
but we don't. And when we get to the end of this podcast, we're going to get into that a little bit more, but I'm just disappointed in the characterization attempts that they're making here.
It almost feels unfair to compare this to the Time Force episode that used this episode's footage, because the Time Force episode, they used the footage, but it was a completely different story. It was the episode where where the monster kidnapped a bunch of children and was holding them for ransom, and then Wes said, "Hey, Dad, could you pay the ransom?" And then his dad is all like, "No, why would I do that?" And then Wes throughout that episode is like, "Oh my God, my dad is actually kind of a jerk. Why do I want to live here anymore?"
Yeah, the words you're looking for, Nate, when they use like the little bit of footage they have from the beginning of the episode, it's called a cold opening, where like they'll show a little bit of the battle beforehand, but they won't show the opening until after that ends.
No.
Yeah.
They didn't use it. No, they didn't use the fight footage from this episode for the cold open. Like, the monster of the day in this episode was the monster of the day for that West episode. I'm
spitting ahead. My bad. I meant to say that the later on episode we have is for that. My bad.
Yeah, and that's one of the better early Time Force episodes too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you want to say anything about this episode, Anthony?
It was okay. It was very surprising seeing how this monster was used, because, like I'm saying, I'm thinking of the kidnapping from that episode. That's all I can think about.
Mm-hmm. I'll probably give this a 7. I mean, it's not horrible, but I'm going to give most fillers a 7, just because, I mean, they're better than June Ranger filler episodes, so.
That's a low bar.
I'm only giving it a 7 because I like the fighting, so.
Yeah.
This will be getting a 5.5.
Oof.
I love the petty reason for it too.
Yeah. I was gonna go to 6.5 originally.
Fair enough.
But I had to deduct a point.
All right, so next up we got Case File 14, Dead Heat. This is an ISA-centric episode, and this is actually one of those episodes where if you've seen the Time Force episode, then you've basically seen this episode, because they're pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that this is a pre-Time Fire episode. Time Force adapted it after Eric was introduced, but Eric is not seen or mentioned in that episode. So, but pretty much the same plot. The latest Londar's prisoner is an old rival of Ayase's, who wants to settle a score with him. You know, I've actually recently, since I actually watched Time Force recently in preparation for this, I actually do remember a bit about it. Like, do you guys mind if I give my thoughts first?
Go for it.
The funny thing is, even though this episode and Time Force have the exact same plot, I would say that this episode is actually much better than the Time Force episode. And now, to be fair, part of it is just because ISA is a much better character than Lucas. I mean, Lucas is not a great character, but I think the big thing... So, the Time Force episode, it has its moments, but I feel like it went a little too far with injecting too much comic relief. Like, at the end of this episode, it's a big emotional moment where, like, ISA is mourning his rival. The episode ends with, like, the Time Force episode where Lucas's driver instructor shows up and says, "Hey, could you give me race car driver lessons, man?" And it's like, really? That's how you end the episode? And, like, and I also think that the rivalry between ISA and Baron is a lot more genuine. It was barely a focus in the Time Force episode, and, like, Baron gives this big speech to ISA about how, like, I was actually jealous of how great of a driver you were, after he said all these horrible things to ISA. Dash's speech to Lucas is just, "Okay, Lucas, you win. I'm going to be a better person when you free me." Cool. Like, I mean, So,
Oh, and no, don't forget
It's-
Nadira's
the time-
stupid face when she makes when she's like controlling him or whatever. That shit was hilarious.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I don't hate the Time Force episode because I mean it's like there's only like 2 episodes of Time Force that I think are genuinely bad episodes. Like the Time Force episode is a serviceable episode, but I just feel like the rivalry between Baron and ISA feels like there's a little bit more emotion
It
behind
was written better here.
and that's honestly why, even though these 2 episodes have the exact same plot, the Time Ranger episode is just the superior product,
Yes,
in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
You guys want to
Oh,
add
and
anything?
plus that, like, you know, I say saves kids, so yeah, there's that. So he wins.
Yeah, I don't think that plot was in the Time Force episode.
Was it?
Not to my
I
knowledge.
swear,
No. I don't think it was.
And they go a little bit more into the backstory, like Baron wants actual revenge on ISA because he was put in jail because of actual testimony that ISA put on him. In the Time Force episode, it's just Dash has always wanted to beat Lucas in a race, and now that he's free, he wants to beat Lucas in a race again. Like the revenge plot, maybe it was there, but if it was there, it definitely didn't leave a big enough impression on me as this episode. So, I mean, I don't know, and maybe I have a little bit of bias because I really like ISA as a character, and Lucas is not a great Blue Ranger at all. So maybe it's just more that I have a connection to ISA, but those little things make this a really good filler episode, and the Time Force episode just not a bad filler episode, but just like a mid-tier filler episode, if you know what I mean.
And one thing to note in this,
It's always nice when they depict some.
I'm sorry. No, what I was about to say was that it's interesting that in the Time Force episode, Najir just had like a little like device that like just shocks him, and he automatically becomes controlled. Whereas in the Sentai, the jewelry that he had around his neck was the reason why he was it was rigged to like control him. I thought that was better handled too.
Yeah, I think the idea of making him more of a, I guess maybe more of a respectful villain is kind of nice because not all criminals are equal, even in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So having one that's, did they explain why he was in jail?
Apparently,
in the Time
in Time Ranger.
He was driving recklessly and like he killed someone in an accident, and ISA testified against him, and that's why he got put in jail.
Yeah, so he's probably not inherently a bad person. So
just
him having a mistake.
Yeah. So them having a villain of the Monster of the Week that was more, I guess, not a terrorist.
Wait, I thought they said he definitely didn't kill the guy, but the only reason why he got frozen was because some connections of some other father like wanted him to get frozen.
Yeah, like he almost killed the son of a powerful guy.
Yeah, that's what it was.
No,
and that's.
But he never actually killed them.
Oh, so he got his. Yeah, so he got punished more strictly because somebody in power forced him to get punished more strictly. Yeah,
like it's almost like you almost run over like the son of like I don't know Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden takes it personally, and then he decides to like demand that you get put in jail or something.
Pretty much.
Like, you want to say anything about this episode, Riz?
No, I think we've covered it more than I had any opinions of it for.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's nothing left for me to say.
I'm gonna give this one an 8, maybe an 8.5. I gave the Time Force episode a 7, but I definitely want to put this like at least one peg up over the Time Force episode.
I'll give this an 8.
I'll give it an 8 too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so we get another filler episode, Search for the Sniper, Case File 15. This episode is pretty simple plot. Honami gets captured by a sniper because she wants to use them to like lure the Time Rangers out. Yuri and Sion, at the end of this, Yuri and Sion, they discover that she likes Domon, and Sion gives her his private email so that they can chat. And the end of this episode is actually kind of adorable, seeing Honami send all these like messages to Domon. But here's the problem: she still thinks Ayase is Time Yellow, so she's talking with Domon, but she thinks she's talking with Ayase. So there's a
But
little
I
bit of
thought,
a
I thought she was given Sion's email address, right?
well, yeah, but that she's communicating to Domon through Sion's email.
Yeah.
Only other thing to note is that this episode was never adapted into a Power Rangers episode at all. Like not even the monster was used in Time Force. So this is one of those like completely 100% unadapted episodes of Time Force. So what do we think about this one, guys?
This does a little bit more for the Hanami story, I feel like. Like, there's a little bit more of a familiarity between her and the cast. It's not great development for anyone, but at least it establishes Hanami more as like a recurring character that'll appear every now and then.
Yeah.
And so that's not bad.
And I just think Go ahead, Patrick.
Yes, it's kind of rare for Sentai seasons to kind of have this non-Sentai member who's not kind of like affiliated in the team in any way get this close to the team. Because the only other season that I've, outside of like, well, I guess you could consider the farmers the Ginga men were living with as a part of their immediate team. But I was thinking of, because I've only seen a brief bit of this season, but Go-Go 5 had somebody like
I know exactly who you're talking about.
You're talking about the astronaut character?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But I don't think she was really that much of a major player in the grand scheme of that season.
Yeah.
So this character, she's kind of a unique case in Sentai because she's not like a Fran. You know, I think that'd be like an equivalent would be like Fran, where she was closely tied to the team but was never really intermingled with the team in its base forms. And Sentai doesn't normally do stuff like this, so it's kind of a cool dynamic for a Sentai to take with a character.
And I also she did this in Ginga Man, and she's doing it here in Time Ranger. I love that there's like a romance story where this romantic interest isn't just a one-off character. Like she continues to appear. Now, I probably like how they do it in Ginga Man a little bit more, but it works here.
If it's anything like Goki's kind of story, then I'll be really excited to see where this leads.
Yeah.
that was easily one of the best character subplots in Ginga Man.
I love Goki's romance story.
It's so good.
Goki is he's kind of a doofus, but he's a lovable doofus.
That's how you say it, yeah.
I mean, sir, I guess.
Well, we'll talk. We're going to be doing.
You'll see when we get to Ginga Man. Ginga Blue is a lovable idiot.
Yeah.
We like those.
What do we want to give this episode, guys?
I might give it a 9.
We give it a. I mean, I really like Honami as a character. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Wow, I'm gonna be the asshole here.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was gonna say a 7.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, I think that's
not that bad. Yeah.
Yeah, not really.
Well,
that bad.
it just to me, it's while the episode is, you guys liked it more. I just kind of felt bored.
I mean, I think that's fair.
Like this isn't the kind of story that I want to get more of. I want more out of the main 5. And we're not really getting that as much as we are getting like a new character added on out of nowhere.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So it's like forcing me to care about somebody who I didn't sign up to care about.
I mean, fair enough. But I mean, these main 5 characters are still okay. Maybe not Tatsuya just yet, but I would still say the other 4 are pretty likable characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to Case File 16, A Dream of Soba. This is a Domon-centric episode, filler episode. So this episode is all about Domon attempting to help a struggling soba chef. Soba is a type of noodle, and I know this because my wife absolutely loves soba. She likes to make that a lot. But he's trying to help him create the perfect soba, and at the same time, this Londar's monster, who's like a food critic, gets unleashed, and he's like destroying restaurants that fail to meet his insane standards. This is another episode that was never adapted into Time Force, and the way that the monster was adapted was weird because you never see him on screen, but there is this one episode where Wes created a bunch of cardboard cutouts of monsters for Jen to like do target practice on, and there was a cardboard cutout of the monster in this episode.
I would never have known that if you had told me.
But yeah, that's a detail I didn't even think about or notice.
And apparently, the monster was mentioned, and I tried to. They say this on the Ranger Wiki, and I tried to find the episode where it was mentioned, but I couldn't remember. But apparently, at some point, Rancic mentioned the name of this mutant to Nadira. His name was Chef Bug, which I mean is fitting given his appearance. But yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of like that. There's like this one episode of it's the same thing with like. There's an episode of Ginga Man where you have this starfish monster and you never see. Well, actually, you do see it in Lost Galaxy, but you only see his shadow because like Leo sees him in the cave and like Leo is like, "What are you doing?" And the monster's like, "Oh no, I gotta get out of here!" And then he runs away, and then Leo never sees him, and all you see is his shadow.
Oh wow!
So, I mean, it's similar to that. But what did you guys think of this episode?
I greatly enjoyed this one a lot. I thought this was a really good episode to give more on Domon. And I might go as far as to say, if we're talking strictly character development centric episodes in this batch, this is probably the best one of them. Like, I could not get enough of Domon's like interpersonal relationship and his trouble relating with the rest of the team and the friction and all. That was good story writing. I want more of this. Please do more.
Yeah, and I just like how, I mean, it comes with some of your standard mindless dumb fun with like that cook-off that Domon had against the monster. Like, it's okay to put this in some of the more serious episodes of Sentai. Like, I could probably remember a handful of like dumb, mindless dumb fun in Shinkenger, and it's fine to do that every once in a while.
Okay, we're talking about Super Sentai. You're supposed to have mindless dumb fun intermingle with the other stuff.
I mean, Genta is a character in Shinkenger, and that guy brought about a lot of really mindless, dumb fun in Shinkenger.
That's his whole character.
So, yeah, I just think this is a really great episode. I had a lot of fun watching this.
You want to add anything, Anthony?
It was okay. I honestly didn't really was like yeah, this episode's great. It was good, but it was like not like. I don't think it was fantastic, in my personal opinion. What you, Pat?
Car Ranger plot. There's probably some episodes of Car Ranger that had this exact same plot because, man, never count out Car Ranger from doing something really dumb.
I can't wait till we do Car Ranger. That's a fun Sentai. It's
we
stupid,
do that.
But it's great.
I think after we do Ginga Man and Go Busters, we should do that just because I want to watch Riz react to this season.
It's stupid, but it's fun.
Okay, but see, here's the thing. If I know we're talking about a parody, my expectations are different, and I'm going to have a blast.
Oh, yeah, but...
I'm not going to be raging like with other
I still want to
Sentai.
see you react to it because Car Ranger doesn't give a crap half the time. That's why it's so good.
Look, it'll still be aces better than another Sentai that has a red tiger.
Because they wanted us to take that Sentai seriously, so...
Yeah.
I'm probably going to give this one an 8, though. I mean, I thought it was very enjoyable.
It's going to be a 9 for me.
Okay. Anthony?
I'm gonna give it a 7.
Okay. You want to get one, Patrick?
He said no. He said nope.
Okay, cool.
He said nope.
Nah. I'm being fair here. If I haven't actually sat down and watched it, I don't want to judge it.
Okay,
That's fair.
enough.
So
You have to go watch this one. I recommend it.
yeah, if I have more time this week, I'll go rewatch some of these just to have them under my belt.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're moving on. This is the last filler episode before we move on to a 3-parter. The Twisted Holy Fist, Case File 17. This is kind of a Tatsuya-centric episode where one of Tatsuya's karate students gets involved with the underground gang that's stealing money from students, and the leader is one of Alandar's. This episode wasn't adapted into Time Force because it's a very violent plot. So it's another episode where footage of the final battle was used for the cold open in a Time Force episode, which is actually the same Time Force episode we mentioned earlier, where Wes decides to leave his dad's house. And also, funnily enough, the Monster of the Day, the suit for the Monster of the Day, it was used for the very first mutant that we see being frozen in Time Force. They used a different mutant to be shown being frozen in Timeranger. We haven't seen that mutant yet, but it'll be in an episode. Trust me. A very heavy-handed episode, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I could probably, just to get my thoughts real quick, I could sum this up pretty easily. This is probably the weakest episode of this whole batch. I mean, I thought Tatsuya was okay in it, but it's just got your standard message of like, don't be a bully. It's a standard filler episode. I mean, not much else to say. I wasn't big into this, but what did you guys think?
I was bored.
Fair enough.
And when Rizwan's bored, I give it a 6.
I actually kind of like this episode. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know. I'm kind of weird. Like, I like the food episode, but I like this one. It's mostly due with like the fact that the kid was being bullied, and I didn't realize because I didn't watch the preview because I was watching it on like a different site besides the Plex because I was having issues with Plex for some reason. So like, I didn't see the preview for it, so I was like, "Whoa!" Like the kid getting bullied. I was like, "Okay, so this kid's gonna finally eventually not be a bull, like not get bullied anymore. He's gonna stand up for himself, and is gonna defend himself basically." Which he kind of does, but he did it in a way where I didn't expect him to be the bully. In the end, I was like, "Wow!" Like that kind of shocked me a little bit. But I think because of him dealing with like being bullied, it kind of resonated with me a little bit because I used to be in his shoes where like I got bullied a lot, so I kind of like resonate with that a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
I could see that. Yeah.
I mean, there's not much else to say. So, like, what do we want to give this out of 10, guys?
I've already given it a 6.
I'm giving it a 9.
I'll probably do 7 just because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I want to give it a 7 because, I mean, I enjoy these okay. I mean, even if I'm bored, I mean, okay, if I'm bored, I would give it a 5, but I thought it was just okay. I thought Tatsuya had some moments.
But how did y'all feel about him getting, pretty much beat up by, I'm not saying he got beat up by the kid, but he let the kid sweat on him like that. How did y'all feel about that?
I mean, I guess it. I mean, he is the student. I mean, he didn't want to hurt the kid, so I guess it makes sense that he was holding back.
He lucky that won't me, because if it was me, I'll beat that little kid's ass. No, I'm playing. I'm like, what'd you say? This is why I can't be a teacher, because I have very little patience for that.
Anthony's literally walking around going, "These hands are rated E for everyone."
Because you're gonna punch me like a man. You're gonna get hit like a man.
All right, so now we're gonna move on to basically a 3-parter episode. Although we can probably talk about these episodes individually somewhat too.
Yeah.
So these next two episodes were actually adapted into one episode of Time Force. So um, so this first part, it's called a shadowy premonition, where Gian attacks a lab that's owned by Tatsuya's father because he's searching for an energy source. Now, there's a little bit about ISA character development here because, well, not character development, but more further of his story, where he he's struggling with this Osiris syndrome, and Tatsuya's telling him, he should tell the others, but ISA refuses. And then later, ISA is trapped in the lab because he was driving one of the executives there, and Tatsuya panics because he thinks that ISA may die alone there. ISA survives, and the episode ends with Tatsuya telling him, "Hey, I mean, maybe you should stop being a Time Ranger and return to your time so that you can enjoy what little time you have left." But ISA is like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that because being a Time Ranger is what gives me hope that I can change my future. That's why I'm going to keep fighting."
Yeah.
So pretty good. A big thing for some story and is that and this part is actually kind of huge, not just for the next three episodes, but also kind of later on in the series too. All is going to end up being a big deal. Gian attacked the lab in search of a crystal called Lambda 2000, and he actually obtains it. And Taku realizes that I didn't mention Taku in the recap, but Taku is the equivalent of Circuit in this series. Taku realizes that the Lambda 2000 is a prototype to a 30th century crystal called the Zeta 3, and Gian is making a robot which he's powering with the Lambda 2000. And the other big thing is that the lab, which keep in mind is owned by Tatsuya's father, they're working on a giant tank called the Rame, which it was also called Rame Tank in Time Force 2. So you probably recognize that if you've seen Time Force. And there's also a giant robot that's being held in storage in the Time Police headquarters, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So what do we think? I think it's okay to judge this episode by itself, just because there's a lot of ISA elements in there. So what do we think about this episode, guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say that this, while it relates to the other stuff coming in the future, this is its own episode. It's not part of a three-parter in my mind. It's like a prequel.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
And yeah, I like this a lot. It gives a great deal more um, urgency to the Osiris syndrome problem going on,
Yeah,
which I think it's been kind of quiet on that front for the last 9 episodes or however many it's been.
yeah.
So having them revisited here is nice. And the way they kind of ravel it in with the other stuff with the Lambda 2000 or Zeta 3 or whatever, I thought this is all well written stuff.
Yeah, I love this kind of growing like brothership thing that Tachi is trying to get in with Asame, of trying to make like he's over concerned with him, and I kind of hope that this thing with ISA changes throughout the season where he actually opens up about this more to the rest of the team, because him hanging on to this, I think, is eventually going to get him into some serious trouble later on if the rest of the team doesn't know about it. So I kind of hope that Tachi is like loosening him up to maybe, be more open. But we'll see. But I like the dynamic that these two share so far, because it's kind of I sympathize a little bit. I see somebody suffering with something, I'm like, freaking get help.
Yeah, and I really like Tatsuya and ISA's little friendship here. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of, at the very least, like, even if I get why maybe why they didn't want to go the route of like having Lucas have the same story as ISA, but like you could have at least fleshed out him having more of a friendship with Wes, like they do with ISA. Because I mean, Jason Fawn and Michael Copon appear to have a lot of like close chemistry together in real life, so you could have
Mm-hmm.
done something like that. So,
I
but
think
but
that's
I
true for all of them, though.
well, yeah, but I mean, in particular, Jason Font and Michael Copon seem to hang out a lot more than.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's not hanging out with Aaron Cahill and Dan Southworth, he's out hanging out with Michael Copon individually.
Yeah.
So, you want to give any comments, Anthony? You're muted, Anthony.
Anthony, you're muted.
I just realized that, y'all. Relax.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I hear y'all. I just realized that. Okay. No, what I was going to say was that y'all pretty much said what I was going to say, but I did enjoy the fact that, Tatsuya was so concerned about ISA, the fact that he, like, the sigh of relief. I know how that felt because I've dealt with that before where I, like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to get, I'm going to
when he
okay, you went.
it's like when he sat down and you saw him like put his hand on his head, like you could tell he was like trying to compose himself because he was having a mild panic attack. I felt that in my soul.
So I'm gonna get a little bit personal, and I hope this is perfectly fine me saying this. So like a while ago, like a couple months ago, my grandpa had a heart attack, and I was literally like shaking. I didn't know what to do. I literally broke down to my cousin. I was worried I was going to lose him. So much was going through my mind or whatever. And then my grandma had like literally told me that like he's doing okay, he's doing fine. And I just had like just a sigh of relief. I was like, oh, that's all I had to say. Cause like I was literally freaking out. Cause I did not want to lose my grandpa because he's literally like my dad. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of had something like that a couple of months ago too. Mom had a.
That was me all last year.
Yeah.
Like,
So, yeah,
everybody's going through
we
it,
all
like,
felt Tatsuya in that. We all felt Tatsuya in that moment.
And I think it makes Tatsuya out to be a somewhat better character than what we've given him credit for, just for that concern alone. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
he's not a bad character. He
needs more.
But
yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
it's weird because I feel like up to this point in the show, he hasn't been treated or developed nearly as well as Wes has up to this point.
Yeah, he's not Wes. And honestly, from what I remember, I don't think he'll ever be at Wes's caliber. I don't think he'll be a bad Red, but Wes is. We just went over this in our one podcast. Like Wes is an S tier Red. I mean, Tatsuya is probably like A tier at best.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing for me to hear you say that because I'm assuming that his role is going to be just as important going forward as Wes's is, and if he comes off as a little bit more underdeveloped, that's kind of a misstep for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say maybe not underdeveloped, but more like it just feels like they do the same stuff, but maybe like Wes just feels like it was written a little bit better.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well,
like kind of like comparing like I don't know like Kenta Date to Andros. Like they're both great characters, but Andros is probably Andros is definitively better than Kenta.
Definitely.
So
I think that one's a little bit more of a drastic comparison because they're two vastly different characters.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe more like more like Ryoma to Leo, where they're both okay, but Ryoma is a little bit better than Leo.
That's not even close.
Yeah.
I still like Leo. Don't get me wrong, but he is not. He's not real. Yeah, he's not real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we want to give 18 out of 10, guys? I'm gonna give it a 9 just because I love.
I was gonna give it a 9.
I'll give it a 9.
Yeah, same here.
All right, so now we have Case File 19, the Moonlight Night, which pretty much, this is probably where the Time Force episode got the bulk of its plot. So Gian unleashes his ultimate fighting machine. It's called Nova to wreak havoc on the city, and the Time Rangers are helpless because in the previous episode, Time Robo got damaged pretty badly defeating the Londars of a day, so they can't summon the time jets. A big thing is that Nova is being powered by a Zeta 3 because he transforms that stolen Lambda 2000 into a Zeta 3, and he immediately enlarges it. And he's having a lot of fun seeing Nova destroy everything. Like he's like, I'm gonna watch all this destruction, and I'm gonna become a god. Like this guy's insane. Now, with the time jets not being able to come, the laboratory deploys the Rame tank, which, of course, can't defeat Nova, and you know that it pretty much gets owned. The
$4 billion of public funds down the drain.
What's funny is that when Time Force adapted this episode, they used the footage of the Japanese pilots in the Rame tank. That's kind of awkward transition, right. I think.
I guess they.
I mean, you could have an all Japanese team. That's not unheard of.
Well, yeah, but the lines are kind of poorly dubbed. I think.
They were just too cheap to hire two actors to be in the tank, and like they have, because remember they have to actually not only film new footage of these two in the tank, they also have to get actors to play the role as well. So.
Well, also remember, this is Saban's last.
Yeah, I know, because that's what I'm saying. He's still being his cheap self, so I'm not surprised.
Well, I think it's being more cheap now because he's giving it up soon.
So Rame is destroyed, and Nova corners the Timerangers, but then a time portal opens up from a solar eclipse, and from it appears a new robot. It has the exact same name as it did in Time Force, the Time Shadow, which it's basically a robot with AI, so it like operates by itself, just like in Time Force. It transforms into its robot form, and it defeats Nova. What do we think? I know I don't have it labeled here, but what do we think of the Time Shadow? By the way.
Like, I love how in Timeranger this thing is making like samurai halal noises.
Yeah.
Who designed that? What purpose does that function
Makes it cool. It just makes it cool.
Don't worry about it.
But I actually kind of forgot that this thing entered through like a solar eclipse, and like the whole like nighttime sky spotlight like scenery that they give for this thing really makes this thing look cool, and how it's always staying on top of rooftops. And this thing is sleek.
Yeah,
it's really sleek.
Yeah, it's probably. I don't know if I want to call it a secondary mech for them because they don't pilot it. Like it's definitely not like what Victory Mars / the Omega Megazord was for the Go-Go 5 / Lightspeed Rangers, but it's still one of my. I mean, if I were to compare it to something like the Delta Megazord / whatever it was called in Mega Ranger, or this is probably better than that, honestly.
Or Tetra Boy, or something along those lines, where it's a AI controlled.
And I guess technically, Liner Boy in Go-Go 5, even though that was a Zord that they could pilot in Lightspeed Rescue because it was the Titanium Ranger Zord, but
yeah.
What
was the one from O Ranger?
Was it Blocker Boy?
If you're the Tackle Boy, the Warrior Wheel.
Yeah, the warrior. Yeah, that stupid thing.
Oh,
I knew there was one. So do I.
That thing was.
But out of the AI controlled mechs, I think this is like the best one by far. So up to this point,
yeah.
But yeah, so the Time Shadow defeats the monster, and then it disappears back into the time portal. Now, a couple of big things happen over at the end of this. So first of all, Taku reveals that when the Lambda 2000 was activated, it caused a rift in the space-time continuum. That's actually what caused the Time Rangers to see past versions of themselves in the previous episode. And they're wondering like what Gian could be up to, because like this is some pretty serious stuff, because like it's
Yeah.
literally like screwing with the timeline. And at the same time, it's revealed that Tatsuya's father created the Rame tank as part of a contract that he made with the Defense Department, specifically to protect the city from the Londars. Now, they don't say this, but specifically, but if you can think critically, you can kind of see this like, this is a big deal because the Londars aren't supposed to exist in this timeline. So the Defense Department contracting a company to make like something huge like that's screwing with the timeline really like huge.
And this was the thing I was waiting to get to with Timeranger, because that's always been one of the biggest complaints against Time Force's plot, was that whole them changing the past that if to affect the future thing was like so thrown under the rug in Time Force, because it was brought up like right before the finale or right when Eric showed up. I can't remember when it was, and it was never really showcased or ever really became like a major plot point of Time Force. And to see the kind of effects of it early on in Timeranger and seeing like the actual impact and concern it's bringing, thank you. This is already addressing one of my biggest, probably the biggest complaint of Time Force. So I'm actually interested to see where they go with this.
And also, Tatsuya's father hints that there's another plan for his business to help protect the city from the Londars. Now, if you've seen Time Force, you might know what that is, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. But if you've seen Time Force, you might get a hint on what he's talking about. And the episode ends with Gian finding a key to a vault in the prison, and we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But what do we think about this one, guys?
There's a lot going on in this episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. I think it's Gian's breakout party. This is the first time where he really feels like he's kind of taking over as the main antagonist of the show. He gets to cut loose.
Yeah, and it's about time.
And how stupid Don Dornero is. He was like, "Oh, you're paying for our vacation? Don't do anything stupid." Okay, I'm doing something stupid. It's like, Dornero, you're an idiot. Okay, just go on vacation. It kind of reminds me. I don't want to see you anymore.
It's gonna remind me of that thing with I don't know why I'm thinking of SpongeBob for some reason, but like it reminds me of like when like Squidward was leaving like SpongeBob in charge of the Krusty Krab while he's gone or whatever, and he's just like he said something, and then SpongeBob says, "I'm sure the Krusty Krab."
Yeah, it's like for being a mob boss, he is very forgiving of somebody who has clearly got his own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Like Dornero's an idiot.
I mean, he looks like an idiot. There's a reason why.
Yeah, he does look like an.
Time Force literally took him and turned his character into an idiot.
No, I don't know why they made him. I don't know why they designed him this way. He's not intimidating.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's literally the dumb muscle in Time Force. Like he's like, all right, Rancic, you need me to like. What do you want me to do, boss? Like, but he is the boss in Timerangers. So.
And then, like 10 episodes in, he just kind of vanishes. Yeah. And then you never see him again.
What do we want to give this 1 out of 10 though, guys?
Think about a 9.
I'll go with 9 too.
Yeah.
Because this set up something that I've been kind of excited for, and I think it does it pretty well. It's a 9 for me too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 9.
And also one thing to note,
the entire like time.
No. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were gonna say anything. I was like, dang it.
I started talking and then he talked over me. I'm sitting there like, I guess I'm just gonna get told, screw you, Rick.
No, you're good.
No, I was gonna say I just like this episode a lot because the Time Shadow is one of my favorite parts of Time Force. Like that Zord's one of my favorite Zords.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Gauntlet Blades. That immediately ramps you up to like a 9 at worst.
Right?
on the
Right?
awesome scale.
Man, I wish I got that deluxe toy back.
I
when
know.
was
I
a
wish I
kid.
got that too. I only
That
got
thing was awesome.
the Time Force Megazord. I never got that one, the Time Shadow.
I did have it as a kid, but it was one of those short, like 10-inch figure.
Oh, though, yeah,
So,
yeah.
kind of wish
I think I
got.
had some of that in another
Yeah.
Yeah, I
timeline.
know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
To eBay.
But what I was gonna say,
Yeah,
what I
you
was gonna
pay 200%
right.
shelf price.
No, but what I was gonna say was that I was interesting how in Power Rangers it was the Time Jet somehow managed to freeze this thing, but in Time Ranger it shows you that the Time Jet did save them, but they went to Alpha, went to form the Alpha formation and used the finisher that way. But you could still see the robot was still kind of short circuiting a little bit. That was a nice little detail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to move on to the last one of this batch, case file 20, the renewed bond. This episode is very similar to the Time Force episode. I would probably say that they have basically the same plot. So that vault that Gian got the key to, it was called the X Vault in Time Force, but here it's called Hell's Gate. It's a vault that holds prisoners that are basically considered while the main ones were arrested for just crimes like some terrorism or something. Like these are people that have engaged in very violent and dangerous and destructive actions, kind of similar to what they kind of give the same backstory to the X Vault too, to be fair. The funny thing is that at the end of this episode, Doniro gets angry at Gian for releasing such a violent prisoner, and he forces him to give up the key. But then Gian is all like, "Okay, I'll never do it again." And then at the end of the episode, he holds up another key, and he's like, "Psych, I'm gonna do it again." So,
Little did you know that I made a duplicate.
exactly. Now we see a little bit more of how the timeline has been affected. They find out that the Time Shadow was created jointly between the Time Bureau and the Inner City Police, but it wasn't supposed to be completed for another 10 years. Which, okay, that's a very subtle thing, but that's a major change of a timeline that Gian's actions created. And with all this going on, the Time Rangers are discovering just how much of an effect their presence is having on the future. And there's a lot of uncertainty on whether or not they'll return. This causes Domon to lose his will to fight, which is made even worse when the when the prisoner of the day proves to be too strong. But the other Time Rangers vow to keep fighting, and Domon realizes he has something to fight for. He regains his spirit. The Time Rangers can gain the ability to combine Time Robo with Time Shadow to form. It's either Shadow Beta if they combine it with Time Robo Beta, or Shadow Alpha if they combine it with Time Robo Alpha. Although we only see Shadow Beta here, we don't see Shadow Alpha. And they defeat the monster. Actually, no, I got a lot to say, so I'll let the other guys talk about this. So, anybody want to go first?
I like how, and this is going kind of continuing off the thing of, I'm glad that they're establishing the change in time thing this early on, because I like how they're taking it into consideration with their actions, and it's almost making them hesitate to do anything more because they don't want to mess things up more than they've already messed up. And it freezes them a little bit. And but then they kind of come to the assumption that, well, we're still like cops, we're heroes. We have to protect people regardless of the consequences. So they kind of use this as like a team bonding experience. And that segment where Domon was on his knees and the others were one at a time running off into battle, and he finally gets up and charges in after him, was that's probably the highlight of the series up to this point.
That was a very powerful moment, Pat.
Yes, it was. It was a very good moment.
when they first started doing it, I was like, please let them do all 5. Don't just have it be one person and the rest of them follow. And it did it because it built up the tension and the emotion quite a bit. I really
Yeah,
really
me
enjoyed
too.
that. Now,
But I got one more thing. I'll let you
Go
go.
ahead.
Is the thing I'm confused about, and this is probably just because I'm thinking way too deep into this, but they said that the Time Shadow was finished and sent out into combat. What was it, like 10 years too quickly, given the timetable for when they left?
Yeah.
Does this mean that the future is following along with them in real time?
Yes.
Or
So
because given how time would seem in like media and stuff, couldn't they have just like waited 13 or 10 years into the future and then sent it back to that point in time when it was ready anyway? Or would I don't
I mean,
so
I think that just
so
speaks volumes on how much the timeline is getting screwed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
it's
here's
weird how they can't say that. Okay, well, let's just sit here and wait for like 10 years, and then we can send it back to them when it's actually good and ready. But if they're like, if the two timelines, like the past or the present in this case, and the future, are like working in sync with one another, like you can only look back at them at where they time travel to, and you have to watch them in real time. I guess that would have been nice to have established beforehand, but if that's the case, then yeah, then that does have an impact on, like, oh well, the tank, what was that
Rame
thing called
tank.
again?
Rame.
The Rame,
Rami.
it being made kind of accelerated like the development of robotics, probably like
Yeah.
by a good maybe decade in the present time, and it accelerated the completion of the Time Shadow and stuff. And I guess that's what they're implying,
It is.
but maybe I'm just looking too deep into how like looking back in time would work.
So I'm gonna start off by saying, "Great Scott!"
Yeah.
Because that's the obvious thing you got to say here whenever you realize you're messing with the
Oh yeah.
future.
Yeah.
But onto the more serious part of this. No, Pat, you're onto it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the time travel that we're seeing in Timeranger is different than the time travel we see in Time Force. So I think, if I remember correctly, Time Force was not as cognizant of the events in the future and how they were changing when they were in the past. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's because they're not parallel occurrences. I think they just go back in their linear time, and that's all that really happens for the Time Force
Yeah.
timeline.
Mhm.
But I think when this team goes back, is it possible that they branch off a new timeline and they live in that? But anytime the future sends stuff back, like the Zords, they're sending them back, but they hit the branched off timeline. So whatever is happening in the prime timeline is not affected. But the impacts of like Rami popping up 10 years earlier, that's part of the branched off timeline. And that future will continue at an accelerated pace, meaning the Time Rangers probably don't really come back until like 2090 instead of 3000.
Yeah.
I mean 2990, sorry. And whereas when the team that we're dealing with right now goes back, they're going back to the prime timeline. Does that all make sense? Am I time travel over explaining
I
this
get.
now?
No, I think that makes sense.
This is literally you're literally explaining the plot of the 2 seasons of Loki.
I have
I
not
haven't seen
seen
season 2 yet.
season.
I haven't seen season 2 yet, but I've heard people really like that season, so I'm gonna give it a chance.
Yeah, I thought it was better than the first season, but that's kind of what the plot of the Loki show is. Was that there's like branching timelines because people keep doing stupid stuff, and we need to kind of stop that from happening. Yeah, but see, this is why I've never been a fan of time travel plots, because it's so easy to make things confusing and stuff that cannot make sense, and it still makes sense at the same time, and then so
Yeah.
I mean, even
yeah.
Power Rangers time travel has always been weird. Like during the during the Alien Ranger saga, like you don't have access to the Ninja Zords because you never discovered those at that time, but you can use the Shogun Zords even though you discovered those at a later time than the Ninja Zords because plot convenience. Like
Wait, what are you talking about, Nate?
no, in the
In the
Alien Ranger
Alien,
saga, they say that like the Alien Rangers they can't call Ninjor for help because at that point in time they haven't discovered Ninjor, and they can't call the Ninja Zords because at that point they've never even gotten their ninja powers, and they haven't discovered the Ninja Zords. But they can use the Shogun Zords, even though they discovered the Shogun Zords after they met Ninjor and found the Ninja Zords. That makes no sense.
You're
So-
overthinking it.
He's not overthinking it. You're just being. Don't do that. He's messing with you, Nate.
Dude, Haim Saban wrote premium quality plot. How dare you try and insinuate?
Well, I'm
the
actually going to
plot
have to
back
agree
then-
with that because I think Mighty Morphin Season 3 actually had really good writing, aside from that.
sorry, I can't take you seriously when you said Haim Saban wrote
And I was like,
premium.
I look at you,
That
I was
right
like,
there.
really? I can see through your PS right now. I'm like,
That right there was.
that's why I didn't say anything. I was like,
But
really?
It's like, be careful with the next word you say, Riz, because this is already turning into a mistake.
No, the mistake already happened in this batch of episodes when they named the damn guy Red Tiger.
Oh.
Let it go.
It's a running gag. It can never die.
No, they just gave
Right,
him
he
more
like had nothing to
fuel.
do with this.
Find me a worse Sentai, and we will start ragging on him instead. And until then,
I don't care about that. I'm just
with the
saying,
worst
like,
established.
But to go back to this Time Ranger episode, and here's the thing, it's kind of weird me doing this because the Time Force episode is also a really great episode. Like that's one of my top 10 favorite Time Force episodes. But I would probably say that this is actually a little bit better than the Time Force Time Ranger episode because you can kind of get why Domon is like this because they already established in a previous episode that he misses his family and he wants to get back to his family while they have to establish that plot for Katie in the Time Force episode. But what I really like is that the scene where they're all charging forward and transforming. Now, don't get me wrong; it's good in Time Force. They do it one by one, and but I feel like it's a little bit better here because like each ranger gives a speech, and it represents like their own character motivations. Now, to be fair, it's not bad entirely in Time Force. Like Jin's little speech before she morphs is perfect.
Yes.
Like I made a promise to Alex that I'm going to capture Ramstick and I'm not going to break it. Okay, that's good. But Lucas and Trips is just standard. People are in trouble and I want to help them. Like, yeah.
It helps. It's a consequence of not having your characters develop. Time Ranger has that benefit, and
so
they actually have something to build off of.
So in the case of this, okay, Yuri is same with Jen. You know, she wants to capture Doniro, whatever the cost. Cool, but like ISA wants to fight on and not ignore everything that's happening around him. You know, so I mean, kind of subtle, but because I mean, he can't say anything explicitly because nobody except Tatsuya knows what's going on with him. I loved Sion's little thing though, like, hey, you guys are my family. I love you guys, and I love fighting alongside you guys. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
That's adorable.
Like little stuff like that just makes just maybe a time. And I'm not trying to badmouth the Time Ranger moment because the Time Ranger, the Time Force moment, because the Time Force moment is also really good, but the little individual speeches just make it a tiny pinch better, in my opinion. And again, I don't want to badmouth the Time Force episode because I love that episode. But
remind me, Nate, what was the plot of this episode of Time Force? Because they didn't have the the changes to the future plot in this episode.
Well,
So why were
it was more that like Circuit found that like the timeline was messed up just because there was no record of the Rame tank being created.
Yeah.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
And then Katie's worried about the timeline. I mean, it's pretty similar. It's just I feel like
It's just
because
that there's no. It's more implied than outright stated,
Yeah.
like it is here. Okay, yeah, I
and
actually remember that now. Yeah,
and I mean I like the Time Force episode. I mean I like Katie as a character more than I think. I mean I know some people here aren't the biggest fans of Katie. I really like that character, but
I like her personality. I
yeah,
just
I
wish there
do.
was more to her
Yeah, her
character.
personality is really charismatic, and you can't hate her personality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But her backstory is extremely
Yeah.
dry.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I just feel like the tiny details with like establishing Domon's personal desire in a previous episode, and
hmm
on top of also Ayase and Shion giving little speeches that really match their characters. I just feel like this elevates it to a level slightly above what is a very good, if not amazing, Time Force episode.
yeah. I agree with that.
I can't say either way because I haven't watched Time Force in like 7, 8 years, so
Yeah,
been a while.
I mean
But no, sorry, good.
the one thing I might give the Time Force episode is that maybe Wes's little. I can't remember much of. I'm not really sure how I feel about how Tatsuya helps Domon regain his fighting spirit, but I feel like Wes's speech to Katie about her having her family to fight for is slightly a little bit more powerful, and maybe that's just because maybe that's just because I prefer Wes to Tatsuya,
Yeah.
so maybe that's where the bias comes from. But that's the one thing I would give the Time Force episode over this. But but again, they're both amazing episodes, so I don't want to badmouth either episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I gave the Time Force episode a 10 out of 10, so I really have no choice by that logic to give this episode a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I would say it's. I don't know if I would go 10, but it's definitely a 9.
It's a 9.
I'll go
for me.
10.
I'm holding up on the 10 because I feel like there's going to be a 10 later on.
Yeah, for sure.
What do we think of the Okay, I know we're not going to see Shadow Alpha until a later episode, but what do we think of the I guess it was called the Shadow Force Megazord and Time Force? Like, what do we think of this combination?
I actually forgot this combination even existed.
Yeah, you and I
To be
both.
honest with you. But then its stupid finisher move where it jumps into the air and shoots like the
clock.
face of the clock down, and like all the numbers like beam in on him and hold him in place. I thought that was sick, but yeah, I genuinely forgot this form even existed.
I mean, I prefer Shadow Alpha. Shadow Alpha's finisher, I think, is a lot cooler, where they like trap a monster in a net and then they slash it. But so just to the only other thing I want to say about this, and it's one of the reasons why I really like this two-parter, is that like I really feel, and I can kind of use this to transition into like the villain analysis. We don't really have to talk about Dorniro and Leela because they don't do much here, but I want to give a shout out to Gian here because I really feel like he's become a much better villain here, and honestly, I feel like he's a bit more fleshed out than Frax was at this point in the series, because the only reason that Frax unleashes Nova in the Time Force equivalent episode is that he wants to prove that robots are superior to mutants. And I'll talk more about like my issues with Frax's motivation when we get to like later on, but I just feel like Gian, like, I honestly never understood why Frax is like doing some of these evil things when like he has an agenda against Rancic, but I'll talk more about that later. I feel like Gian's motivation is just a bit more fleshed out here, where he's just insane and he just wants to watch the world burn because he's an insane person, and we'll get more of something fleshed out from him, but they're making him out to be kind of a pretty intimidating villain. Like I think he's become really good.
I think I'm gonna say this because I honestly feel this. I think out of all of the characters I'm looking for, like to be fully fleshed out by the end of the show, he might be the one character I'm the most interested in.
Who?
Gian.
Yeah, no, Gian.
Because everything that I've heard about the comparisons between Time Ranger and Time Force is that Gian versus Frax is a very interesting pick and choose between on which character is better, because I've heard, because Frax is an amazing villain in his own right in
Yeah,
Time
he
Force,
is.
but people said that Gian is probably a little bit more like they said that people, for how I've heard it compared, is that Frax is more, I guess, cunning, while Gian is more unhinged, and I want to know just what they mean by that, because I've heard people say that this guy might be one of the more demented villains in Sentai. So I'm kind of excited.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
So I'm really curious as to what people mean by that in detail.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see where this guy ends up.
Anthony Riz, you want to say anything about Gian? Because I mean, he's the only villain worth talking about right now.
No, Patrick stole the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. So
also, what was Nadira's counterpart's name again?
Leela.
Nadira?
Leela. She was getting really close to getting canceled when she came back at the end of this episode.
Oh,
that tan was
real dark as
dark,
usual. Like,
yeah.
Where's the family that tried it?
Yeah, there's a subplot where. Yeah, there's a subplot where he sends Dorniro and Leela to the beach so that he can like pull all this stuff, and then when Leela gets back, she's super tan. So, it took me a minute to figure out what I was talking about.
Because when they showed those two coming back and she stepped on screen, I was like, ah!
I don't
understand
something. I'm
why
like,
did
wait a
you do
minute.
that?
Wait a minute. I was like,
but I mean, I don't like. I mean, I'm not. I mean, Leela, I can kind of give a free pass because honestly, like, I mean, I don't hate Nadira, but she was never really the. She was never really so. I love Rancic, but Nadira, I mean, I feel like, I mean, she's great in the in-game arc, but I feel like she could have. She
got my nerves real quick in the beginning when I first watched that show. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah,
she's everything about Astronema without all the parts that we liked.
Bingo.
About
yeah. I mean, I would argue that she's like back in like the early episodes of Lost Galaxy when Trakina was just Scorpius's daughter. She was worse than Trakina was back then.
Yeah.
So, but so I guess to kind of wrap this up, we should each talk about our. We can go one by one. We are, we still have 5 Rangers. By the way, this is we're going to see the 6th Ranger soon, but this is actually the longest a series has gone without introducing the 6th Ranger.
Yeah, I was actually going into this stretch of episodes expecting to see Timefire in this batch.
Well, he's coming. So, he's coming in the next batch, so
I'm excited for that.
So, we got Yuri, Tatsuya, Ayase, Domon, and Shion. So each of us, one by one, can talk about each of these and give our updated rankings. Anybody want to go first?
No, I'll go.
Okay, go ahead.
I probably put Domon at the top. There's just something about how sympathetic he is. Like, when he has his emotional moments, dude, I just want to bro hug that guy. So much. And then it kind of gets cluttered from here. I guess maybe Sion would probably be number 2, Ayase 3, Yuri, and then Tatsuya, I guess. I don't know, but I could kind of rearrange those bottom 4 in any way, and I wouldn't particularly feel bad about it, because they're all everybody's kind of on an even level to me.
I was okay. I think mine would. I'm not gonna interrupt yours, by the way. I'm just like, I'm saying slightly. My list is similar to yours, but I think I'm gonna put ISA second, and Sion third, because I feel like how you feel. Like, I don't want to just say like these. I'm using this ranking as like the rest are just bad. It's kind of hard to rank these guys, you know.
I kind
Well,
of
it's
want
like
to put
King
Domon at
Ozer.
1, and then the other ones are like 2A, 2B,
Yeah.
2C, 2D.
And Tatsuya being like the least
Yeah, and,
best
and
one is kind of like good. I mean, he's not terrible, but he's not.
yeah. I kind of agree with what Riz just.
Yeah, he needs more.
Yeah, I agree with what Riz just said. It's that they're all so well written that you kind of don't want to rank them because the bottom guy is still
He
like
needs work.
an
Yeah,
A
he needs
tier
work,
character.
but he's not bad
A
though.
what tier?
An A tier character. Like even the worst character in this season is an A tier. Like I know that we're kind of like ripping on Tatsuya a little bit, but he's still a good character.
Can I go next?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I want to respond to that. I think Tatsuya is more like a B tier character right now.
Yeah, it's still
I mean,
good. Yeah,
I think that's fair enough.
Bordering. Well, okay, but I want to clarify. I'm putting him B tier, but that's a borderline high C, low B for me.
Fair enough.
I just he's kind of average to me as a red. He's not really sticking out with anything. You know, he's not like a Takeru or a Marvelous or hell, even a King. Like, there's nothing notable about this guy.
It doesn't help that, I guess, seeing how we've been doing a ton of compare and contrast, Wes is just like a significantly better version of him up to this point.
Yeah, and so I think Tatsuya's at the bottom for me, but I'm going to start from the top because it's easier. So I have trouble because I do think Domon deserves the top spot, but I also think Sion is a really good close second, if not a good contender for first here. But I think Domon gets first, and then Sion second, then Ayase third, Yuri fourth.
That's fair.
Yeah, the same list.
Yeah, I think that's fair because Yuri didn't get any focus episodes in this batch, so
yeah,
Yuri just kind of existed, and once you're done, Nate, I do want to talk a bit more about this batch overall because I haven't really done that yet.
Okay, fair enough.
So go ahead and give your rankings, then we can circle back.
I'm still putting ISA at the front just because I mean his story, and especially like in this batch where he establishes that like he fights because he wants to, because it gives him hope. I just think that's I think that's really powerful, and it's very much in the spirit of the like do we like fate and future theme of this series. I'll put Domon after that just because it's Domon. I mean, I don't know. I've already put Domon in my top 5 Sentai Yellows. I'm starting to think he might be making a case to be number 1.
Luca will not approve of you.
Well, I mean,
nor will Kotaha.
Ah, damn it. Kotaha, please don't be mad at me for doing that.
Kotaha will never forgive you.
Yeah, well, she's a nice person. Maybe I could talk with her a little bit.
Domon's a very nice person too, actually.
Definitely going to put Sion there. I was telling Riz this earlier. Like, I used to think that Sion was like the weakest character in this bunch, but honestly, I forgot how great of a character he is. Like, and honestly, with how much they flesh out his backstory as an alien, as much as I like Trip, I feel like he's slightly better than Trip just because they're using
Trip with more layers.
The alien backstory to their advantage with him. I'm going to put Yuri there. She's a great character, and I feel like she's going to be better in the next batch because there is a handful of episodes revolving around her in the next batch. But with this batch, she does deserve to be down there. And then just Tatsuya, because not because I think Tatsuya is bad. I do think that he's like a B tier at worst character, but it's like with the King Ogres. Like, these are all great characters. Like, you kind of feel bad ranking someone last because they're not. Yeah. Like, I don't know. He's like this season's equivalent of Kaguraki and King Ogre.
I just find it funny that Red and Pink are like undoubtedly the 2 best in Time Force, but we have them as the bottom 2 in the Time Ranger rankings.
Exactly.
It says a lot about Time Force.
Yeah.
And
I don't think it'll be this. Like, I know, like, if I was ranking the Time Force characters, I would put Eric above there. Here's the thing: I don't think now Time Fire is going to be a bottom of this list. So at least it's not going to be for the third guy that we would rank.
I'm excited to get introduced to Time Fire.
Yeah,
Because
me
if he's
too.
anything like Quantum Ranger, then we're in for a good time.
Yeah. So going back to general thoughts about this
Yep.
batch of episodes, and just to look back at the 20 episodes we have looked at so far, I think I'm the only one that really has issues with Timeranger so far. Because I think y'all are generally really liking it. And so my complaints with it is the character writing is kind of lacking a lot. Like, I'm basing Domon's a really well written character, and Sion implicitly is a well written character because he has a good vibe, but there's not too much more going on in terms of like real good development. Like, Tatsuya had many opportunities to get like a lot more character development, to flesh him out, relationship with his dad and all that stuff. Yuri, I talked about this in the last one. There was a misstep there because I think they did Jen so much better, and the fact that they don't do anything remotely similar to that with Yuri, that's a damn crime. So I just have a lot of misgivings with the overall trajectory for this Sentai.
I mean, I'll kind of mirror you this because I did think the first 10 episodes were pretty decent because they were establishing everything. So you'd expect them to be a little bit more heavy and stuff. But these episodes, 11 through 20 that we just did, they feel like a calm before the storm kind of thing.
I mean, maybe, but
because next episode we're going to get introduced to Time Fire, which is going to add a whole new dynamic to the show.
yeah.
I'm assuming, and because of that, this season's equivalent of the Silver Guardians is going to get introduced, which might play into Tatsuya's character a little bit more because I know it played into Wes's a lot. And I'm assuming Tatsuya and Time Fire, whatever his name is, are going to have the similar kind of like maybe like rivalry connection that Wes and Eric did. So I feel like going forward, there's going to be a lot more put into it, but they decided to give you like a little bit of a lull before things started getting out of control.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that we need like nonstop, like big plot building every time.
Yeah,
but these characters,
these episodes
we're not
really
getting a lot out of them.
Yeah, I mean, I was expecting things to be a little bit more, maybe laying more groundwork for these characters and stuff too, but these really felt like just space savers.
See, because I was telling Nate this afternoon over text, because the writer is the same between Shinkenzer and this. And Shinkenzer at this point, I mean, with the exception of Hot Garbage, I was in love with the entire cast. And even with Takaru, if you really stop and think about my anger in those early episode reviews we did, that is a perfectly correct response, given I don't know the endgame arc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so for me to be angry with him is eliciting the right response that you're supposed to be giving.
Yeah.
And it's saying that she did her job correctly. But I'm not getting much of anything like.
Yeah, because
I mean,
I
go ahead.
I said this because we were loosely talking about this before we started, but I've seen Shinkenger and Ginga Man all the way through, which are other two seasons that were written by her. And I said that I think Ginga Man up to this point had better written characters than Timeranger.
Yeah.
Because Ginga Man had a lot of like heavy emotional stuff early on, and it drove the plot pretty significantly.
And
this season feels more like it's using the plot to carry the characters.
And that's what I don't like.
because Ginga Man and Shinkenger were good at the characters carrying the plot,
And
I think that's where she is at her best when she's writing the show that way.
And I think
Agreed.
that kind of goes off of what I was saying previously. Like, I feel like Time Ranger, I think, has a better soul plot than Time Force, because we're already seeing, like, them
Yes.
explicitly going into like how the timeline is affected, because they just glance over it in Time Force. But I
Yeah.
still see where. But the thing I'll give Time Force is that Time Force has better characters in like certain areas. Now, I'll disagree with Riz a little bit. I do think okay, obviously Domon and Shion, we can both agree on those two. I would argue that I think ISA is still also a
Oh
good
no,
character.
ISA is a good character. I'm not saying he's not, but
but if,
he's
go
his
ahead.
focus needs a bit more. Like, yeah, we have a lot of stuff with him with the Osiris syndrome later on,
Mm-hmm.
but give me more of him without the Osiris syndrome as well.
Well, I think we got one good episode where the Osiris syndrome wasn't
we got
mentioned.
a decent one.
Yeah,
It was fun, but
yeah,
it
but I
it
can
didn't
still
have that same punch.
but I can still understand, and
Yeah.
I think, especially in the context of this batch of episodes, because I'll be honest, I was kind of frustrated with these, because the next batch, if I remember correctly, like, we are going to get some episodes revolving around. We're going to get at least one revolving around Yuri, and I know that we're going to have like a two-parter that revolves around the relationship between Yuri and Tatsuya, which, if that's anything like what the Time Force episode was like, it was really good. But I'm kind of disappointed, I'm not going to lie, with this, because, we get good episodes revolving around the three characters that were not exactly the best in Time Force, but the two characters that Time Force is really fleshed out by this point of a series. Like, with Tatsuya, okay, we got some episodes, but they're mostly just standard filler. And then with Yuri, there's literally like crickets chirping coming from her character development right now. So,
And I'll take it one step further, and you may disagree with me on this. You may agree, but from what I remember of Go Busters at this point, I feel like we had better character writing even in Go Busters at this point.
I don't know. I might agree. I might not. The problem is I haven't seen Go Busters in like several years, so I wouldn't know.
So
But from what I remember, I might actually have to agree with you, honestly.
because honestly, it was a lot simpler, right? Like they didn't have like deep, meaningful stories in Go Busters at this point.
Like, they established
But
what Hiromu, Ryuji, and Yoko were like before they became Go Busters.
right, and so we're getting stuff from them. We get a bit more info on them, and we also they do a better job of making them relatable, I feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's the same magic you get with Shinkenger, because Kotaha is not a very complex character, but she's just written in a way that's so relatable that we can just we're stuck falling in love with her, right? Like, there's no other way to look at that.
Yeah, but this point in Shinkenger, I would say, well, okay, by this point in Shinkenger, Ginta was introduced, but before that, you could probably say that the weak link was Mako, because there weren't many episodes dedicated to her, but she's still not a bad Pink, but she's like an A tier Pink at best.
No, but Mako, while she didn't have a lot of character-centric episodes, she still was in the background supporting and helping and being a motherly figure. Yuri is just kind of there.
Yeah, and I can see that.
She doesn't really do a lot. Like, she doesn't say a lot. She doesn't do a lot. She doesn't get involved until it's something about business.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of disappointed with her in this batch of episodes. Now, I think it'll change in the next batch, but
it really feels like this Sentai is going to be very back heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is another thing this writer's pretty good at, because look at Shinkenger.
The only Sentai I would say that she's written that's not back heavy would probably be Ginga Man, because I feel like that.
Yeah, Ginga Man was actually pretty.
Do you
think
fair
all the way through?
Back heavy?
Actually, no. The more I think about it, maybe
It wasn't. I mean,
No,
I
it
don't
wasn't.
think.
But I would
I think it was
still.
pretty
I mean,
consistent
honestly,
throughout.
I kind of thought that Gingaman did have a little bit of back heaviness, and I think it kind of was a little bit more to its detriment, but maybe like not to like an extreme degree where it ruined the show. But
Yeah.
we'll get to that when we get to the third act of Gingaman. But yeah, Gingaman was pretty fluid,
Yeah.
and it's so far though. It seems like because I have watched probably like the first 20-ish episodes of Go Busters. This definitely feels like the weakest start to any of her seasons.
Well, the weakest start I would probably say is
Yeah,
Tokuger,
well,
just because it's
well,
Tokuger.
Oh
it's
my God. I
implied we're
forgot
not
about that.
including that season here.
Okay. I need to revise an earlier implication I made then. Timeranger's not the weakest start to a Sentai anymore. It's Tokyuger.
Yeah.
I forgot that she did Tokyuger.
But by that point with Tokuger, she had given us Shinkenger, she had given us Go Busters. She's earned the right to have it done. And Tokuger isn't that horrible. It's just
Let's just say that when we're talking about her and her shows, we're excluding Tokuger inherently.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about the other four.
It's like when you talk about like Bruce Kalish in Power Rangers, you know, you can talk about how good, like, I mean, he wasn't a horrible writer, but you do want to kind of leave out the fact that
Overdrive.
Operation Overdrive. Like,
Did you watch Tokyuger, Patrick?
I watched the first 5 episodes of it, and I got so annoyed with everything that I just quit immediately.
I'm not going back.
If that's the case,
We're not redoing that.
We've already done
the
it already. Yeah.
Because I watched Kyoryuger from start to finish, and I jumped on to watch Tokyuger to see if it was worth it, and then I was like, nah. And then I started up with Ninja, and I went 5 episodes with that. I was
that's
like,
even worse. That's even worse. I'd rather watch Tokyuger than that any day.
No, Ninja.
I've heard horror stories of
I dread when I have
Okay.
Ninja's the first new Sentai I'm going to have to watch after I'm done with the show, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I'm going to have to watch too.
Let me just say this. Ninja and Geki Ranger are on the same footing in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch.
But I would rather deal with Takaharu.
God dang it. Nate's about to be like, them fighting words.
No, I'd rather deal with Takaharu yelling, "That's so hot!" than have to deal with...
catchphrase?
It's his catchphrase, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
No.
That's his catchphrase. I'd rather deal with that.
That's terrible.
Than deal with Waki Waki Dick.
So we have
remember that.
3 annoying, like, I guess, lines from different Reds. Of course, you heard Riz try to do John's, and you have Takaharu, It's So Hot. What do you think of Yosha Lucky? That to me is like that's annoying. Hearing that every time.
Okay. I've watched
Q-Ranger.
I've watched about half of Lucky so far. And I mean, whatever. You know what I'm saying. Of the 3, I prefer Lucky.
What you know what's really crazy though is that like Kirame Red, as much as I love Kiramager, and I'm not saying this because I hate his catchphrase or whatever, but he will say it a lot, and I don't know how y'all will feel about that. He says Kirame King, which is like I think like Kira inspiration or something like that. So he has his thing where like he'll get inspiration and he'll like literally stop what he's doing, and he'll say Kirame King. He'll have his hand up and he'll say that every time he gets inspiration for something. I don't know how that will. That may get y'all nerves. I'm not gonna lie, but I don't know how if we ever get to watching Kiramager, how that'll make y'all feel. Cause I don't mind it. It didn't bother me.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I want to see. Now that is the Sentai I do want to watch.
But anyway, so I mean, anybody want to just give just some last second thoughts? We're meeting Time Fire in the next batch. I hope you guys are excited.
My last thought is I'm glad we're done with Geki Ranger.
Yeah,
No,
I
just
said
got what he
said my last parting words are I'm glad we're done with Geki Ranger.
It's been two Sentai.
It just never.
on
It
that,
just
bro.
never stops. Well,
And we're looking at a
my
Sentai. I know that you don't think that this is a 9 or a 10, but you said that this is a 7 or an 8. This is leagues above Geki Ranger, dude. Just enjoy
Yes.
what we're doing.
Yes, I'm enjoying it. I'm not critiquing it in a bad way. I'm just critiquing it because I'm holding it to a higher standard because it's good so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
Geki
my sentiment.
Ranger, I would
I
celebrate
share
even
his.
with
I
minors.
share his sentiment, but replace Geki Ranger with Zoo Ranger.
Fair enough.
Look, Zero Ranger is another really bad one. I
Yeah.
cannot
Yes,
stand.
I know.
I can't stand Geki.
But
Hey,
anyway,
Dragon Caesar, shut up.
Get over it. Get over. Look, my brother's dead. Get over it.
I was kind of hoping when I was watching the subs of it that I got a bad sub. But then I popped into Shout Factory DVD
uh-huh.
and
This is bad.
It's just as bad.
Yeah.
Yes. No, nothing's gonna save this season,
Yeah,
man. Just
yeah.
accept it's bad.
But anyway, so we thank you guys for checking this one out. We're still going to be doing our King Oger episode reviews, especially now because King Oger got really good the last time we were on King Oger. I know we've posted like a couple of other podcasts since we've done that one, but yeah, King Oger's looking really good. We're actually going to have to stretch the number of case files that we're going to be doing on Time Ranger because we want to give the in-game story arc its own podcast, and that's going to be like 4 episodes long. So in order to line that up, we're going to stretch it out. So next time we're going to be looking at 21 through 33. And like we've said like multiple times, that's where Time Fire comes in. So things are about to get pretty good. I mean, I would say that they're pretty good right now, but they're going to get even better. After that, we'll do 34 through 46, after which we'll do the in-game arc. We got a lot of things planned for you guys. 2023 is maybe wrapping up soon, but we got a lot of things planned for you way deep into 2024 and beyond, and we hope you guys will join us for that. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe, leave comments down below with what you thought and, maybe like what you would like to see us cover. Check us out. If you're listening to us on iTunes or Spotify, leave us a review. We thank you guys for checking us out there. You can reach out to us on our website, animesecrets.org, for feedback. And that's about it. We'll see you guys next time. We thank you guys so much for checking us out, and we'll see you guys for our next Time Ranger podcast or the next King Oger, whichever we end up doing next time. But until that time, you guys stay safe. We love you, and may the power protect you.